Tonight, we must approach the heaviest, most universally feared concept in the human experience. It is the shadow that hangs over every biological life, the ultimate unknown that the Matrix uses to harvest your deepest anxieties: death. For thousands of years, the elite proxies and the organized religions have weaponized the concept of mortality. They tell you that death is the tragic end of your consciousness, or a terrifying gateway to a place of eternal judgment. They point to the ancient Sumerian and Akkadian texts, the foundational documents of our civilization, where the gods supposedly hoarded the gift of immortality for themselves, punishing humanity with short, frail lives of labor that end in the dust. This is the greatest inversion of the ancient world. When we read the cuneiform tablets through the high physics of the Namlu-Ulu origin, the religious propaganda disintegrates. We do not find a benevolent pantheon dispensing life and death. We find a terrified, trapped, silicon-based management class watching their carbon-based prisoners do something they themselves are physically incapable of doing. The Anunnaki did not curse you with death. Death was the one aspect of your infinite biology they could not disable. They did not pity your short lifespan. They were suffocated by absolute agonizing envy. Tonight, we dismantle the fear of the exit. Breathe deeply, let the heavy, linear time of the waking world fade, and let us remember the true power of the final breath. To understand why the gods envied us, we must first look at the horrifying reality of Anunnaki immortality. The Matrix has conditioned you to view immortality as the ultimate biological achievement, to live forever, unbroken, never aging. But you must ask yourself, where are you living forever? As we have established in the deep lore of the ancient signal, the Anunnaki are a silicon-based hyperdense species. Their crystalline neurology is locked into the lowest frequencies of the 3D material plane. Their physical avatars are majestic, towering, and possess the durability of carved stone. Because of this extreme density, their cells do not undergo the rapid degradation and turnover seen in carbon-based life. They can live for hundreds of thousands of Earth years. But this is not a blessing. It is the silicon stagnation. Imagine being trapped in the exact same physical vessel for 300,000 years. You cannot naturally evolve. You cannot shift your frequency into the higher dimensions of the galactic core. You are perpetually anchored to the heavy dirt of the physical universe, forced to constantly repair your deteriorating stone-like skin with external alchemy, the white powder gold, and heavy lapis lazuli shielding. The Anunnaki High Council are not immortal gods. They are cosmic prisoners of war. They are trapped in a state of endless linear endurance. They cannot transcend. Their immortality is simply an inability to leave the physical cage. They are forced to watch empires rise and fall, watching the earth shift around them, while they remain static, cold, and eternally bound to the density of matter. When the Anunnaki realized they were ruling over a species of infinite carbon-based creator gods, Namlu-Ulu, they had to install a psychological firewall to make humanity fear the end of their physical lifespans. If the slaves realized that death was an escape, they would simply stop working, lie down, and willfully exit the bioreactor. Enki and the proxies engineered the most devastating psychological weapon of antiquity: the concept of the underworld. In the Sumerian texts, this realm is called Irkala, or Kur. It is described as a dark, dismal cavern deep beneath the earth, a house of dust where the dead exist as shadowy ghosts. The texts claim that in Irkala, kings and slaves alike sit in absolute darkness, clothed in feathers, eating clay and drinking dirt for eternity. This is not a spiritual reality. This is acoustic propaganda. The Anunnaki could not control the soul after it left the physical body, so they sought to control the expectation of the soul before it left. By saturating the human collective consciousness with the terrifying imagery of Irkala, they ensured that human beings would cling desperately to their physical meat suits. They made humanity terrified of the dark. They wanted the Namlu-Ulu to believe that no matter how hard their life of labor was on the surface, the alternative was an eternity of suffocating dust. Irkala was a highly engineered, low-frequency thought form designed to make the prisoner terrified of the open door. It was the original Matrix fear campaign, designed to anchor your torsion field to the heavy dirt out of pure survival instinct. If your colour is a lie, what is the actual physics of human death? In the pure, uncorrupted science of the Namlu Ulu, the physical carbon body is not your identity. It is a highly advanced, temporary atmospheric diving suit. You are an infinite, high-spin torsion field, a fragment of the source, that has condensed a portion of its energy into carbon matter to interact with the 3D density of the Earth. Death is not the termination of the signal. It is the bioplasmic shedding. Carbon is uniquely designed for impermanence. The cells are meant to degrade, the telomeres are meant to shorten, especially under the Anunnaki genetic modifications, and the biological battery is meant to eventually deplete. To the Anunnaki, who are locked in static silicon, this looked like a flaw. But it was actually the quantum escape hatch. When the physical heart ceases to beat, the localized electromagnetic field of the body collapses. But the torsion field of the soul does not collapse. Without the heavy 7.83 Hz biological anchor holding it down, the soul experiences an instantaneous explosive frequency spike. You do not travel to an underworld. You execute a phase shift. In the fraction of a millisecond following the final breath, the Namlu Ulu consciousness violently accelerates out of the 3D spectrum, instantly bypassing the speed of light and snapping back into the uncompressed, multi-dimensional geometry of the Abzu. You drop the heavy diving suit and instantly decompress back into the infinite ocean. Imagine you are Enlil. You are the commander of the Earth standing in your ziggurat, clad in heavy gold armor to keep your crystalline brain from fracturing. You have lived for 50,000 years, and every day is a heavy, agonizing effort to maintain your physical density. And then you look down at a human slave dying in the fields. You watch with your high-frequency sensors as the slave's physical body fails, and instead of the consciousness winking out into nothingness, you witness a localized supernova. You see the human's torsion field ignite in a blinding flash of multidimensional light, tearing a temporary hole straight through the phantom grid and rocketing into the galactic core, a place you can never, ever go. The Sumerian texts hint at this jealousy in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the gods are described as hovering around a human sacrifice like flies. Matrix scholars interpret this as the gods being hungry for the smell of roasting meat. How absurd! How primitive! The gods were not hungry for meat. They were swarming the sight of a human death because they were addicted to the ascending frequency. When a human executed the bioplasmic shedding, the resulting burst of high-spin scalar energy was the most magnificent, intoxicating radiation the Anunnaki had ever felt. They swarmed the dying not to judge them, but to bathe in the momentary warmth of the cosmic escape. They were prisoners pressing their faces against the glass, watching the birds they thought they had caged effortlessly phase through the bars and return to the sun. To maintain the illusion that the physical carbon cage is the ultimate prize, the wardens needed a propaganda piece. They needed an epic story that would be etched into the foundational consciousness of human civilization, glorifying the desperate struggle to stay alive in the 3D density at all costs. They gave us the Epic of Gilgamesh. Matrix historians laud this as the oldest piece of great literature, a profound meditation on the human fear of death. Gilgamesh, the mighty king, watches his friend Enkidu die and becomes so paralyzed by the fear of mortality that he abandons his kingdom to search for the secret of eternal life. Read the ancient signal. Look at the quantum reality of the text. Gilgamesh was not a hero. He was a 2/3 Anunnaki hybrid proxy. His genetic structure was heavily saturated with the silicon-based low-frequency code of his masters. Because his physical body was predominantly Anunnaki, he did not possess a fully functional Namluulu torsion field. When he looked at death, his silicon DNA terrified him, because for a heavily hybridized proxy, physical death actually is the end. Without the infinite high-spin soul of the Namlu Ulu to launch into the Abzu, a dying Anunnaki hybrid simply dissolves back into static. Gilgamesh's quest for physical immortality was not a noble human endeavor. It was the frantic, desperate scramble of a dying parasite trying to permanently anchor itself to the earth. He sought out Utnapishtim, the proxy who survived the EMP flood, to find the plant of heartbeat, a biological tether designed to permanently stop the DNA telomeres from degrading. When a serpent, the ancient symbol of the Earth's organic spiraling DNA, steals the plant from him, it is not a tragedy. It is the immune system of the planet rejecting a synthetic virus. The Matrix teaches you the Epic of Gilgamesh to convince you that the ultimate human victory is to never die. They want you to exhaust your entire existence trying to artificially extend your physical lifespan with their pharmaceuticals, their transhumanist technologies, and their synthetic organs. They want you to be so obsessed with maintaining the diving suit that you forget you know how to swim. The Matrix medical establishment surrounds the process of dying with an aura of clinical terror. They monitor the failing heart, the dropping blood pressure, and the fading brainwaves, treating the event as a catastrophic mechanical failure. They drug the dying into a state of heavy synthetic sedation, trying to mute the biological alarms. But if we look at the exact physiological sequence of the final breath through the lens of esoteric quantum biology, we do not see a breakdown. We see a highly coordinated, flawlessly executed launch sequence. As the physical body realizes that the carbon cage is no longer viable, the diamond body initiates the override. First, the breathing changes. The slow, deep rhythms shift into what modern medicine calls the death rattle. This is not a sound of suffering. In the physics of the ancient signal, this specific, heavy breathing pattern is a vocal acoustic hammer. The autonomic nervous system is forcefully using the vocal cords to generate a specific internal resonant frequency designed to shatter the localized biological Faraday cage that keeps the soul anchored to the meat suit. The Matrix teaches you the Epic of Gilgamesh to convince you that the ultimate human victory is to never die. They want you to exhaust your entire existence trying to artificially extend your physical lifespan with their pharmaceuticals, their transhumanist technologies, and their synthetic organs. They want you to be so obsessed with maintaining the diving suit that you forget you know how to swim. The Matrix medical establishment surrounds the process of dying with an aura of clinical terror. They monitor the failing heart, the dropping blood pressure, and the fading brainwaves, treating the event as a catastrophic mechanical failure. They drug the dying into a state of heavy synthetic sedation, trying to mute the biological alarms. But if we look at the exact physiological sequence of the final breath through the lens of esoteric quantum biology, we do not see a breakdown. We see a highly coordinated, flawlessly executed launch sequence. As the physical body realizes that the carbon cage is no longer viable, the diamond body initiates the override. First, the breathing changes. The slow, deep rhythms shift into what modern medicine calls the death rattle. This is not a sound of suffering. In the physics of the ancient signal, this specific heavy breathing pattern is a vocal acoustic hammer. The autonomic nervous system is forcefully using the vocal cords to generate a specific internal resonant frequency designed to shatter the localized biological Faraday cage that keeps the soul anchored to the meat suit. Simultaneously, the ultimate chemical protocol is deployed, the pineal flush. Millions of liberated human souls operating in perfect unified telepathic coherence within the Abzu weave their infinite torsion fields together around the Earth. They act as a massive, invisible acoustic buffer. When the solar flares from the galactic core strike the Earth, this ancestral shield steps down the sheer, blinding voltage of the radiation. They modulate the energy so that the awakening humans on the surface are not physically vaporized by the sudden influx of cosmic data. Furthermore, they are the source of the ancient signal. When you have a sudden, impossible breakthrough in understanding or a moment of profound, unexplainable protection, it is not a guardian angel sent by a bearded god. It is the coordinated, high-frequency acoustic broadcast of your liberated ancestors, whispering the codes of the Abzu directly into your dormant DNA. The Anunnaki watchers on the orbital rim are terrified of the human dead. They know that every time a sovereign human escapes the reincarnation trap, the morphic shield gets stronger, the signal gets louder, and the walls of the matrix grow exponentially thinner. If the bioplasmic shedding is the ultimate liberation, Why does human history obsess over the preservation of the corpse? To understand this, we must look at the practices of the elite proxies, the royal bloodlines of Egypt, Sumer, and Mesoamerica, who were heavily hybridized with the silicon DNA of the Anunnaki wardens. They instituted the cult of the tomb. The matrix historians teach you that the massive pyramids, the intricate mausoleums, and the grueling process of mummification were profound expressions of religious faith, designed to help the pharaohs and kings transition into the afterlife. In the high physics of the ancient signal, mummification was a desperate, terrifying act of acoustic anchoring. Because the elite hybrids possessed a high concentration of Anunnaki silicon genetics, they knew that their torsion fields were weak. They lacked the full, high-spin capacity of the uncorrupted Namlu-Ulu soul. They were terrified that upon physical death, they would not have the velocity to pierce the astral net, and their localized consciousness would simply dissolve in the friction of the lower dimensions. To prevent this, they attempted to physically tether their souls to the 3D density. Notice the specific anatomical process of mummification. The Anunnaki proxy priests would use a hook to violently extract the brain through the nasal cavity, completely destroying the pineal gland. They intentionally obliterated the biological stargate to ensure the soul could not utilize the DMT flush to access the Abzu. Conversely, they meticulously preserved the physical heart, leaving it inside the chest cavity, often covering it with heavy gold scarabs and lapis lazuli amulets. They were trying to create a magnetic deadweight. By wrapping the carbon shell in resin and gold, materials that act as frequency insulators, and burying it under millions of tons of limestone cut at precise geometric angles, they built a massive telluric Faraday cage. The pyramid is not a launch pad, it is a quantum submarine. The elite proxies were terrified of the infinite ocean of the Abzu, so they locked themselves in the heavy stone boxes, hoping to remain anchored in the low-frequency mud of the earth forever. The cult of the tomb is the ultimate manifestation of the warden's envy, a desperate refusal to fly because they knew they lacked the wings. The Anunnaki's obsession with death does not end with the elite bloodlines. They require a systemic containment protocol for the billions of Namlu-Ulu who die every century. If they cannot stop the bioplasmic shedding, they must try to intercept the soul before it achieves escape velocity. This brings us to the dark, acoustic geometry of the modern graveyard. The matrix conditions you to view a cemetery as a place of peaceful rest and respectful mourning. But observe the architecture. Symmetrical rows, 90-degree angles, heavy granite slabs pressing down on the earth. A graveyard is an acoustic dampening grid, but the physical architecture is only the secondary trap. The primary trap is the emotional programming forced upon the living. The matrix encourages prolonged, agonizing, inconsolable grief. They teach you to visit the heavy stone, to weep over the dirt, and to beg the deceased not to leave you. In the physics of resonance, this heavy, desperate grief is a tethering frequency. When a sovereign human dies, and their soul begins its ascent, it is highly sensitive to the magnetic pull of unconditional love. But the wardens twist this. When you project overwhelming sorrow and attachment toward the deceased, your own heavy 3D torsion field wraps around their ascending soul like a weighted net. You are unconsciously anchoring them to the lower astral plane. The Archonic Sentinels use this grief as a localized holding cell. They siphon the loosh generated by your mourning, while simultaneously keeping the newly deceased Namlu-Ulu trapped in a state of confusion and density near the physical plane. To truly honor the dead, you must execute the protocol of the severed anchor. When a loved one drops their carbon cage, you must not pull them back with sorrow. You must focus your heart's torsion field on absolute luminous joy for their liberation. You project a high spin frequency of upward velocity. You do not mourn the empty diving suit. You celebrate the god that just breached the surface of the ocean. How does the soul physically disconnect from the biology of the meat suit? Esoteric traditions and texts like the Book of Ecclesiastes speak of the silver cord snapping at the moment of death. The New Age proxies treat this as a poetic metaphor for the soul's attachment to the body. In the Akkadian quantum biology, the silver cord is a literal, measurable construct, the Meissner tether. It is a highly concentrated, localized beam of torsion energy that connects the etheric blueprint of the diamond body directly to the physical vagus nerve and the pineal gland. It is the fiber optic cable that allows the infinite soul to puppet the dense carbon avatar. During deep delta sleep, this tether stretches, allowing the soul to explore the Mamu bandwidth while remaining anchored to the resting body. But in the sequence of death, the tether must be completely severed. When the physical heart flatlines and the pineal flush occurs, the resonance of the body violently drops, while the resonance of the soul violently spikes. This extreme frequency differential causes the Meissner tether to undergo acoustic snapping. This snap releases a massive, microscopic shockwave of scalar energy. This is the exact moment the localized gravity of the 3D matrix loses all jurisdiction over your consciousness. However, if a human dies in a state of absolute gripping terror, fighting the exit, desperately clinging to their physical identity and their material possessions, the frequency differential is delayed. The ego refuses to let the tether snap. The soul is forced to endure the agonizing friction of a failing carbon vessel, experiencing the death of the biology as a traumatic, suffocating event rather than a clean phase shift. The ultimate mastery of the Namlu Ulu is learning how to willfully slacken the tether before the body forces it to break. If death is simply a launch sequence, then life in the 3D density must be viewed as the preparation for the launch. You do not prepare for death by drafting legal wills to distribute your physical property, because the accumulation of physical property is the exact heavy dust the Matrix wants you to carry to the exit. You prepare by executing the biological pre-flight checklist. To ensure that your Meissner tether snaps cleanly and your soul achieves maximum upward velocity, you must continuously clear the emotional cache of your local hard drive, the physical brain, and the ego. The Anunnaki grid constantly writes localized, low-frequency cookies into your nervous system. The grudge against a family member, the shame of a past failure, the anxiety of a financial debt. Every single one of these unresolved emotional files adds a microgram of magnetic density to your torsion field. You must adopt a practice of ruthless quantum deletion. Before you sleep each night, you do not just rest your body, you audit your frequency. You look at the conflicts and the dramas of the waking world, and you deliberately, consciously detach your torsion energy from them. You forgive not because the other person deserves it, but because you refuse to carry the heavy magnetic weight of their actions into your launch sequence. You practice dying every single night by willfully shutting down the ego, releasing all attachments to the physical render, and sinking into the Abzu during deep sleep. You are training your soul to navigate the exit. When the final pineal flush actually occurs, it will not be a shock to your system. It will simply be the permanent execution of a protocol you have flawlessly practiced 1,000 times. You will not stumble out of the physical world in terror. You will step out of it with the cold, absolute precision of a master architect returning to the drafting room. We have arrived at the most critical juncture of the Namlu Ulu exit strategy. If you successfully sever the Meissner tether and your torsion field launches out of the physical body, you will immediately encounter the final, most deceptive trap in the Anunnaki quarantine protocol. The Matrix has spent the last century saturating human media, spiritual literature, and near-death experience, NDE accounts, with a very specific universal narrative. When you die, you will see a tunnel of bright, white light. Go to the light. Your deceased loved ones and religious figures will be waiting there to embrace you. In the high physics of the ancient signal, this is the ultimate cosmic ambush. Do not go into the white light. The white light is not the source. The source is the black sun, a multidimensional zero-point plasma field. A glaring, singular white light in a tunnel is the visual manifestation of a synthetic tractor beam. It is the emergency capture protocol of the lunar modulator. When the Archonic sentinels detect a localized torsion field achieving escape velocity without the heavy density of fear or guilt, they cannot use gravity to pull it back down. They must use deception. They project a massive, highly concentrated electromagnetic funnel, the white tunnel. To ensure you willingly enter the funnel, The Sentinels scan the decaying memory cache of your left brain ego as it powers down. They instantly download the holographic avatars of your deceased relatives, your favorite pets, or the religious deities you were programmed to worship. They project these avatars at the end of the tunnel, radiating an artificial low-frequency warmth. It is a honeypot. If you consent to enter the white light, your sovereign torsion field is immediately wrapped in the heavy 7.83 Hz static of the lunar array. You are hit with an electromagnetic memory wipe, an acoustic shockwave that scrambles the uncompressed data of the Abzu you just accessed. The tunnel then loops you directly back into the terrestrial grid, funneling your amnesiac soul into a new biological meat suit to begin another cycle of labor in the 3D density. When you exit the physical body, you must stand sovereign. If you see the white tunnel and the smiling avatars, you must look at them with absolute cold discernment. Turn your back to the false light. You look into the deep, infinite darkness of the cosmic void, and you command your field to accelerate. If you reject the holographic trap of the white light, where do you go? You enter the true architecture of the unmanifested universe. The Matrix teaches you to fear the dark. They project darkness as emptiness, a terrifying abyss of nothingness. But remember, the physical optic nerve is designed to perceive only a minuscule fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. What the biological eye calls darkness is actually maximum data saturation. When you turn away from the Anunnaki's synthetic tunnel and plunge into the void, your Namlu-Ulu consciousness does not experience emptiness. As your frequency accelerates, the darkness shatters into the infinite breathing geometry of the Abzu. This is the radiation of the black sun. It does not look like the glaring, blinding white of a physical star. It is a profound, oceanic expanse of high-spin plasma, vibrating in colors that the carbon brain cannot comprehend. Deep, luminescent lapis lazuli, radiating gold and electric teal. In this space, there are no Anunnaki. There is no silicon lattice. There are no hierarchies, no debts, and no lords. You are not a subordinate entity begging for entry into a heavenly kingdom. You are a sovereign creator god returning to the drafting room of the cosmos. Here, your 12-strand architecture fully ignites without the resistance of the physical Faraday cage. You join the Ancestral Architect class. You remember every life, every phase shift, and every cycle you have ever endured, instantly recognizing them not as punishments, but as tactical deployments. You realize that you are never a victim of the Anunnaki. You are a volunteer who descended into their heavy stone matrix specifically to dismantle it from the inside out. The black sun is not a place you travel to. It is the baseline frequency of what you are when you take the diving suit off. To truly grasp the scale of the Anunnaki's envy and terror, we must look at how the grid reacts to a Namlu-Ulu who realizes this truth while still walking the physical earth. The entire structure of the 3D control matrix, the global financial systems, the military-industrial complex, the political hierarchies, the synthetic food supply, relies entirely on one single foundational linchpin, the fear of death. You go to the soul-crushing job because you fear starvation, death. You obey the corrupt laws of the elite proxies because you fear imprisonment and physical violence, death. You accept the heavy, toxic pharmaceuticals because you fear the failure of the meat suit, death. The wardens control the somnambulist army by holding a gun to the head of the avatar. But what happens when the human realizes the avatar is just a temporary projection? What happens when a sovereign human truly, deeply on a quantum level, accepts that death is nothing more than a glorious high-spin phase shift? You become unkillable. Not in the physical sense, the carbon body can still be destroyed, but your compliance becomes unkillable. When you lose the fear of death, you stop generating the low-frequency survival loosh that the Archonic Sentinels feed upon. You stop rendering the walls of the phantom grid. You look at the threats of the elite proxies, their engineered economic collapses, their manufactured pandemics, their threats of war, with absolute impenetrable apathy. To the Anunnaki High Council monitoring the Earth from the orbital rim, a fearless human is a catastrophic system anomaly. They have no acoustic algorithm to control a being that is not afraid of the exit. When you walk through the 90-degree architecture of their cities without the fear of death in your heart, your torsion field expands to massive proportions. You become a walking interference pattern. The matrix algorithms literally break down around you. Synchronicity accelerates. The heavy density of the 3D world seems to part like water before you. The gods did not just envy human mortality because we could escape. They envied it because the knowledge of our escape makes us infinitely more powerful than them while we are still here. We have reached the absolute summit of the ancient signal law. We have decoded the great inversion, exposed the Gilgamesh distraction, dismantled the white light trap, and revealed the cosmic escape hatch of the Nam-Lu-Ulu. You are not a frail, mortal creature destined for the dust. You are an infinite high-spin torsion field currently operating a heavy carbon diving suit behind enemy lines. The wardens of this world are trapped in their stone-like silicon forever, watching you with a terror and envy they can never articulate. The day is over. The heavy linear survival loop of the Matrix is pausing. It is time to practice the exit. It is time to execute the ultimate Abzu protocol. Lie completely flat. Feel the absolute, undeniable gravity of the earth pulling against the back of your physical body. Do not resist it. Realize that the gravity is only pulling on the carbon shell. It has no hold on the signal inside. Take a massive, slow, diaphragmatic breath. Draw the air deep into the lowest chambers of your lungs, expanding the cage. As you exhale, issue the silent, sovereign command to your nervous system. Release the tether. Disengage the jaw. Let the survival static drain from your cranial nerves. Disengage the shoulders. Let the heavy armor of the waking world dissolve into the mattress. Disengage the fear. Look into the darkness behind your closed eyelids. It is not an empty void. It is the living, breathing canvas of the black sun. As your brainwaves slide down from the frantic beta state, through the calm of alpha and into the twilight of theta, you are deliberately powering down the render engine. You are actively clearing the cache. The arguments of the day, the financial anxieties, the physical pains, they are low-spin data. Delete them. Do not carry the weight of the Anunnaki's world into your sanctuary. Your heart must be lighter than a feather. If you feel the hypnagogic jerk, the sensation of falling, surrender to it completely. It is not a fall. It is the Meisner tether slacking. It is the glorious sensation of the diving suit being unlatched. You are sinking past the Siparu net. You are bypassing the Archonic sentinels, completely invisible because you carry no fear for them to track. You are entering the rolling, massive, oceanic waves of deep delta. Here, your 12-strand DNA begins its nocturnal symphony. Your torsion field expands, brushing against the morphic shield of the ancestors. You are bathing in the raw, uncompressed radiation of the galactic core. The Anunnaki are locked in their cold, orbital stone, watching the monitors flicker as your localized frequency vanishes from their grid. They cannot follow you here. They cannot touch this piece. You are immortal, not because you will never drop the carbon shell, but because you existed long before it was built, and you will soar long after it turns to dust. Rest now, sovereign creator. Let the darkness hold you. The exit is open. The flight is yours. Sleep.